town with Rob Brown breaking it all down. Yeah. SEC Sidelines Sports on my mind. Rob Brown calling game time, highlight shine, executive mind. Brady Martin keeping Rob in line. Like, subscribe, share it, tell everyone. Sideline Sports, y'all come back real soon. Same place, same time, same tune. From the booth to the field, every Saturday feeling you home. We ride.
There goes that band.
Make that living room sound like the zone.
They're a little slow this morning. You know, the little complaints. They're getting little band fights going on. I gotta regulate later. I'm the manager now. Apparently, I don't know how that.
Band feuds. There we go.
But they don't like the name. It's about this name. They're not sure. You know, should we be the red zone rowdies? They don't know if they should be the touchdowns. There's lots of stuff. Of course, you know, the bass player wants to be called the safeties. You know, it's a lot going on. You can name the band right here, right now. If you want to join in the chat room, if you're probably watching us right now on some sort of social media, make sure you like, share, follow, subscribe, comment. You know, anything you got, you can do right here. We're on 8 different platforms live every single Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Eastern. How'd I do, Rob?
Excellent. And like you say, share, like, and subscribe. Everybody, thank you so much for doing that. It just is a force multiplier. 8 channels live. Look, got Coach John Brady. He was in Oxford last night for an overtime 106.99. Thank you, Matt. John Hartwell for that update. Double overtime win over Ole Miss. Ole Miss, we'll talk about the Rebels. They've run off the road, 4 bald tires, uninsured motorists, no insurance. You know, it's a suspended driver's license. It's everything you can think of. Look, John Hartwell in beautiful Fairhope, Baldwin County. Get down there, folks, and visit. I don't work for the tourism board, but that is God's country down there. The Foley Beach Expressway. Go eat you some docks, seafood. Just ask John Hartwell, where do the locals eat? Because once again, he's a local. Coach Matt Dean, Rhodes College, interim head coach of the women's team over there. Funny, by the way, Matt, listening yesterday to Heath Klein, the producer and sometimes co-host of Chuck Oliver's show. He said his parents told him when he was going to college, he could go as far north as Duke and as far west as Rhodes. And he goes, you know, Chuck, that is in Memphis. And, of course, they all knew about Rhodes College. It's got a damn good brand, I can tell you that, plus an over $400 million endowment. And that is big for a school with less than 2,000 students. All right, my color TV was working last night. And, guys, y'all know basketball. And watching the end of that Florida game, the Texas fans were getting weird in Austin. Hey, man, we're going to pull it off. And the Gators just go into this high gear, and that last 7 minutes, as I said to Franz Beard in all caps, was stellar. So, Matt, break that down. This Gator team, they're tough as and Tommy Hawk fouled out. They still won.
Listen, for 33 minutes, I was thinking, well, first of all, Texas is an NCAA tournament team. There's no doubt about it. But for 33 minutes, I thought, hey, Texas is going blow to blow, punch, punch. They got a chance to win this game. And Florida, just the last 7 minutes was just perfect basketball, in my opinion. They got multiple stops. They got out in transition. They executed in the half court. Condon's just a beast, guys. And I know you guys, Brendan, I know you know this, and Franz knows this, but I got a chance to watch that game from tip to finish last night. And I mean, I think he was 8 of 8 of his first 8 field goal attempts, you know, and I think he ended up in the mid-20s. I could be wrong on the number there, but he led a transition break where I think, you know, last 4 or 5 minutes, he just lobbed the ball to Ha, and it was unbelievable. Just the whole fact that a 6'11", 7-foot guy could come down there. And I'm trying to find an NBA comp, and I'm working on that because normally I have one. But he is so unique because he protects the rim. He can put the ball on the floor. He can face. He can handle the ball. He gets downhill. An excellent shot blocker. In my opinion, the best player in the league.
Well, the one I would compare him to, John Hartwell told me this, would be Yao Ming. John?
Man, that's going back there. That's man. Hey, I liked it better when we were talking about Bill Laimbeer and the Nasty Boys.
Okay.
No, watching Florida last night, like you said, they pulled away at the end. Further solidifying my thoughts, as is the consensus around the country. They certainly have the talent and the moxie to repeat, to go back to back. Here is what I would say if you were Coach Golden, and this is kind of an awkward take, but a lot of coaches think this way. A loss somewhere down the stretch here, whether it's in the last couple of games of the regular season or in the SEC tournament, may not be a bad thing. Just kind of a, hey, dose of reality. We've got to come to play every night. Because they are playing at such a high level now and playing with such confidence that every time they step out there, no matter they're taking every opponent's best shot right now, because everybody else in the SEC knows they've got a 2-game lead now. But I will say this, it's about when you get hot. And Alabama and Arkansas are both playing really good basketball right now. I watched a little bit of both of those games last night. We talked quite a bit about Buckyball on here, and they lose by 15. But Alabama and Arkansas are establishing themselves as noisemakers in the month of March as well.
Yeah, and I was watching that Arkansas A&M game. A&M up early, and that's what you see a lot with the Buckyball, and he doesn't have a lot of height. I mean, much at all. Not a lot of talent. And when you start running a system like that, Matt, Dean, you can only trick them so long, can't you?
Yeah, and quite frankly, we've known on this for a while that Florida's got a chance to get back to the Final Four and maybe repeat. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think they got a legit chance to get back there. I'm starting to believe that Arkansas is a team that we were talking about second weekend, but could Arkansas make a run to the Final Four as well? I think them and Alabama, like John said, are playing really well at the right time. It's going to be fun the way the seeding comes out, because it's all about matchups in the NCAA tournament. And quite frankly, that's what I've loved about Florida, is just I don't know if they get phased too much by any different style of play. I think they're equipped to handle any style of play, especially if they run into a team that may be a little bigger than some of the normal teams they play, because they have size, they have length. And then there was a stat last night. I think at one point they hit like 6 of their first 8 threes in the second half. If Florida's hitting threes, guys, lights out. There's no doubt you can't beat them. Think about Arkansas. We talked a little bit about Darius Acuff before we came on the air, Rob. They have just one of those special young men that can carry a team. And he's really fun to watch. I don't know what's going to play out in the NBA draft, but I got to believe he's a top 5 pick.
You're muted, Rob. Muted, Rob.
Sorry, my finger hit the wrong button. But I think you're talking about Tommy Hawk. I think that's how you pronounce his name, from Pennsylvania. Maybe he was a 2-star out of high school. And I like here, block party. Alex Condon scored 29. He is a point center. I've never heard that. I like that term.
That would be Buddy Martin making that comment.
They said last night on the TV broadcast.
Yeah, he would eat Ming for breakfast. I mean, the one thing I remember about Yao Ming, the Houston Rockets were playing the Memphis Grizzlies in an NBA game, and my dad had courtside seats with a friend. Yao Ming went diving for a ball and landed in my dad's lap. And he said, "That's the largest human being I have ever seen." He was like 8 feet tall, 400 pounds, but pretty agile. Okay. John, what I'm seeing right now with Ole Miss, 10 losses in a row. And you can't say, well, those losses are helping them because they're getting ready for a tournament run. It's broken at Ole Miss. And last year they were really good. This is year 3. Just if you were an athletic director, what's the conversation you think Keith Carter has had or is going to have to have with Chris Beard?
Yeah, and I watched a little bit of the early parts of that game last night, and you could see the frustration from Chris Beard right on through all their players. But I tell you an interesting dynamic to this, Rob. I actually went last night for a little while. I went drove over to Mobile to see a little bit of South Alabama and Southern Miss women's game, and then I watched some of the ULM South Alabama men's game. And they do a little chalk talk like many schools do prior to the game. And one of the assistant coaches from South Alabama, and South Alabama is in first place in the Sun Belt. ULM is in last place. And that assistant coach said, hey, don't let the records fool you, because college basketball is much different today. These kids are going to play hard for ULM because you've got 3 or 4 individuals on that team who've had decent years, and they're playing for a payday. They are underclassmen. They're trying to play to get recognized when they go in the portal, which again is a whole new game. But I appreciate the candor of Riley Conroy, was actually the assistant coach who made those comments. But that's spot on in today's world. So you never know what's going to happen, because kids are playing for themselves, and that can be a positive for a really bad team to play over their head one night, but it can also be a negative. And I think you're seeing that some from Ole Miss, because they're playing give and go ball, and I'll use the PG version of that. They're playing give it to me and go the other end, because I'm jacking it up, man. I'm getting mine tonight, and that's there's very little on the court chemistry with Ole Miss basketball right now.
Well, Matt, I noticed that about 3 years ago when Kentucky lost to St. Peter's, and they had there were 11 of the 13 guys on Kentucky's roster were making more money on their NIL deals than St. Peter's basketball head coach. Okay, there were 2 players on that Kentucky team that were visibly upset after that loss. One of them was Oscar Sheboy. Can't remember the other one. The rest of them were looking at the mobile banking app. They didn't give a damn. As a coach, you got to have players. You can't win without them. But I can't say it on the air what I'd say to them, but you got to get these guys to play as a team. And you always talk about, when I've got guys or girls that are as happy without the ball as they are with the ball, then I know I've got a really good team.
Just going back to John's point, this is a year-by-year proposition now with NIL and roster construction. As good as Ole Miss was last year, for whatever reason, this roster from a chemistry standpoint did not work. And John's right. Right now, everyone's trying to get theirs. Unfortunately, some decisions are going to have to be made in the offseason about, okay, what direction we go from replacements. Now, looking at some of those guys that play in the Sun Belt, yeah, I got to tell you, right now, one of our philosophies in our men's basketball program is 21-4. Zoe Goodson's done a tremendous job. It was one of my last hires as director of athletics. And they're trying to get a bid at the NCAA tournament. But when he talks to kids, a lot of times he says, hey, look, we want to advance you. If we can promote you and you have a couple good years, maybe we can get you to the next level. And I think that's what you have to do from a mentality standpoint. Recruiting now at Division I, it's a little bit, it's almost like NBA free agency every year. If you have someone that's elite, they're probably going to leave you. If you have someone that's not very good, and the give and go method that John described, then they're probably going to replace them. So that's what's so impressive about Florida, is just the continuity in their program. And I'm gonna give you another comp here for our guy Condon. I know this is very optimistic, but he has a lot of skill set that the Joker has at Denver. And I'm not saying he's going to be that guy. Brendan, don't take this quote and put it out there and if it doesn't happen, but he does a lot of the same things. When you see how he fills the stat line, that's what the Joker does for Denver. He's that point center at times too in the NBA. And I would say Condon's more athletic at this point in his career than the Joker is. So, I'm just telling you, Florida has so many pieces, and their continuity is something that other teams. Are you telling me there's not talent on the Ole Miss roster? I don't buy it. Right now, they're playing for themselves. They're not playing for the name on the jersey, on the front. And that's one of the things I think Cal roster construction. He said last year he was like basically, you know, they were talking about how to keep some of the better people. And he's basically comes out and says, if I have to pay this one guy, how am I going to pay the other 12? You can't do it. So you have to be really realistic in who you can pay. And sometimes you're reliant on a young player like, you know, they have right now in Acuff to go out there and do really well and great things for you. If that happens, two things. One, you're going to be successful, but you're probably going to lose him to the NBA draft. And that's okay, because quite frankly, they have a chance to get to the second weekend and third weekend in the NCAA tournament.
They do. And John Hartwell, roster construction. That's what so many people fail to get a grip on. You know, getting a locker room full of guys that are all for one, one for all. You look at Arkansas and the job that Cal's doing there. He's having fun again. To me, he looks really happy. This is year 2, correct? You know, and they're going to make. I think they're going to make a hell of a run in the tournament. You know, height wise, I mean, they're not exactly the tallest, biggest team, but they move the ball around really well. And Cal is again, when he's on his game, he's one of the best coaches in the country.
Yeah, he is. And especially in a big game, you think of guys like him and Tom Izzo and coaches like that who've done it for many, many years. I want to go back to your point about roster management and constructing the roster, because probably more so in basketball than in football, because you've got, you know, way fewer guys on the team. You've got 12, 13, upwards maybe of 15, last couple being walk-ons probably. You've got to do it right, because you're kidding yourself if you don't think every guy in that locker room doesn't know what the other guy is making.
Yeah.
And if you have overpaid in advance and you have one of your top 2 or 3 paid guys not playing at all or sitting on the end of the bench, if you don't think that will erode whatever chemistry you may have, you're kidding yourself. So, you know, a lot of people are doing 3 tiers. Tier 1, hey, I've got to go with 2, 3, 4 guys, a quality big man if I can get it, which are really expensive, and a quality point guard. You got to start there. You got to have 3 or 4 of those. That second tier, you got to have quality players, what I'd like to call the 8 and 8 guys. If you can get 8 points and 8 rebounds out of them on a consistent basis, those guys are going to help you win. And then you got to have a handful of glue guys. You got to have 2 or 3 who, come hell or high water, they're putting the team above all else. They're good glue guys. They keep everybody loose. And teams that have just gone and spent as much money as they can on 12, 13 guys, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to manage that roster. I don't care who you are as a coach. So I think that's really, really important, and probably more so in basketball than in football because of the limited numbers.
Yeah. All right. So, Matt, we have 13 scholarships in men's basketball. Most teams have 10, maybe 11. Let's flip down to Tuscaloosa. Charles Bediako, we all know about that case. Right now, I think he's practicing with the team. He's probably going out on – I don't think he goes out on the strip. I think this guy's like a 4.0. I think he's a really good student. But with all that going on, you got to give props to Nate Oates for keeping that together, because – there's a lot of distractions there. And if you're ADHD like I am, man, what was my question? No, seriously, I think he's doing one of the best coaching jobs of anybody. Say what you want about who wouldn't have tried to get the guy back. I mean, I think it's wrong, but everybody would try to do it, wouldn't they?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I heard a quote last night. Nate Oates felt like in the first half, it may have been the best basketball they played all year. One of the things that they're unique because they shoot the 3 at a high level. They're a very hard guard. You know, they're more dribble drive oriented, which really is very difficult. Sometimes when my teams played teams like that, we were almost sat in like a 2-3 matchup zone because we were so worried about dribble penetration and a help situation. You leave your man, you kick it to a shooter for a wide open 3, because our philosophy on defense is 3 was greater than 2. So we're going to defend the 3-point line. My roadmap for if I had to do a roster right now, and John hit on some of this, but my first thing is my quarterback. I want to find me a leader, someone that doesn't turn the ball over, that doesn't have to score in high volumes that can set the table. That's my point guard. I got to find an elite defender on the perimeter. I got to find someone that can guard the other team's best perimeter threat offensively, almost 1 through 4. And then you talk about the 8 and 8 guy. John, I may spend less on my money in the roster by finding me a big that's a defender or rebounder that's not a scorer. So maybe I get that person at a value price, right, in the portal. I don't have to go out and get a 16, 18, and 10 guy. I can find me a couple 8 and 8 post players, 6'9", 6'11". I know that's easier said than done. But how do you do that? You have to have a vision. You have to have a plan. And I think with Nate Oates, the great thing about Alabama, man, they just get it and they go and they shoot the ball, and it's really tough to defend. You talk about matchup nightmares. Alabama is a matchup nightmare if you face them in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA, and you got to get back in transition. You got to defend the 3. They're really explosive guys, and I think they're a tough out in the NCAA.
I do too. And John, watching the Florida-Texas game, Boogie Flans, I think it'd been 3 for 26 on 3-point attempts, and all of a sudden, a guy like that gets hot. Or Darius Acuff at Arkansas. What I'm always impressed with is how these guys don't start having a pity party, start falling apart. Because if they do, if the point guard falls apart, your whole team falls apart because he's the distributor.
Yeah, and back to the roster management point, you're exactly right, because you've got to have interchangeable parts, because inevitably there are going to be untimely injuries. God forbid if you have a suspension on your team or something, you got to have more than option number 1. You better have 2, 3, 4. They may not be as elite level of player, but you've got to build some depth too, especially as you get into NCAA conference tournament play and NCAA tournament play, because you don't have a week's preparation between games. When you play the Thursday, Saturday, or the Friday, Sunday games, you've got to have some depth, and you've got to be strategic about how you do it. And again, I hate to keep coming back to the Florida, but Florida, has 10, 11 guys deep that can make significant contributions and can be on the floor at any time and be a positive.
Yeah, and another thing you notice about Florida is Todd Golden keeps those guys really on an even keel. He doesn't get rattled. He doesn't micromanage. He doesn't pencil whip. He doesn't overcoach. You can overcoach people. And I'm talking to a coach right here. Next question for the man from Davenport, one of the Quad Cities, for those of you that don't know. Wait a minute. Where was Fred Gervin from? Remember him, Saturday Night Live? You're spending the night with me. Fred Gervin, male prostitute. Moline, Illinois is where he was from the Great Lakes Feed and Seed Company. But anyway, Matt, you start looking at what is going on in the basketball. Missouri is a team that, Dennis Gates, they got to win a couple of nights, I guess Tuesday night. Nobody saw that one coming against Tennessee, but Rick Barnes has got Tennessee playing really well. Let's just keep going down the road. We're starting to see some quality, certainly separation from the rest of the pack, but Tennessee's one of my teams that I think at least can make a Sweet 16.
They can. And I heard an interesting stat from my son, who's a Tennessee fan, when Missouri beat him the other night. I think Gates has only lost at home maybe 4 times in the SEC at home games. I mean, they're really good in Columbia. We got to confirm that, but I've heard he's got a really impressive record at home. But you look at him on the road, I mean, overall, he's above 500, I believe, but they're very good at home. I think Tennessee was fun this year. You remember for the last 3 years, they've had a lot of experience, a lot of guys that stayed around. They got some youth now. And I think Rick really likes coaching his team. He's got them to buy in defensively, which is kind of like his bread and butter. I think Tennessee is a team that could get to the second weekend, Rob. I think offensively, though, I just put, Arkansas and Florida at a different level. And that's the 2 teams in the league right now. If you had to tell me who could make a Final Four run besides Florida, right now I'm saying Arkansas. That's kind of my thought process. I do think that, you look at the amount of teams we get. I think Lenardi said we could get as many as 11. I'm still not seeing Auburn right now at 15 and 13 in my mind as an NCAA tournament team, but I know they're probably a bubble team right now. They had a great win last week against Kentucky, and then they kind of slipped the next game. So I think they have to win at least 2 of their last 3 and maybe 2 in the SEC tournament, that would get them to 19 wins. That's what I think the pathway for Auburn is, in my opinion, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if they do that way.
Right.
They don't. You've got what, 13 losses or something like that, and you've got 15 wins. They got that quality win at Florida, the first time in 30 years. They've got a win over Arkansas early at the Neville, and the Kentucky win the other night. Mark Pope, so gracious in defeat. John Hartwell, you look at Kentucky. We're not this. Look, it's been a while since Kentucky's been the dominant program in SEC men's basketball. It's Florida right now that everybody's chasing. And Cal with Arkansas, he stayed probably 5 years too long at Kentucky. But what's your, give us your opinion, your thoughts on the job with that $22 million roster they're doing or not doing?
Yeah, here may be unfair to ask me, and I'll state this up front, a little skewed on it. I'm not sold that Mark Pope is the guy for Kentucky. I was familiar with him when I was at Utah State and he was at BYU. Yes, he has a Kentucky background.
Yeah.
But I just the personality there, and you see it coming through in the media sometimes. I'm not sure how relatable he is to today's young people who are on his roster. And again, they $22 million, you ought to have a ton of talent. And they clearly do have that. But there's a disconnect there too. And oftentimes their talent shadows that disconnect. But I just don't think long-term success that he's necessarily the answer from a coaching standpoint there. Hey, Rob, I hate to bring something new in here, but this is breaking news that I wanted to throw out to you guys, courtesy of our friend Ross Dellinger, who he broke this out this morning, and very relevant because the SEC and the Big Ten have authored a white paper taking aim at those arguing for the consolidation of media rights, specifically targeting Cody Campbell's, the high-end Texas Tech donor who spent all that money on the commercials, targeting his Saving College Sports, campaign and the Sports Broadcasting Act that he was trying to pursue and things like that. But this is going to be really interesting because it's the SEC and the Big Ten taking a stand and drawing a line in the sand. And it will be interesting to see how the Big 12 and the ACC and others react to this. This is hot off the press this morning, like I said, from Ross Dellinger. I believe the white paper, their intention is to have it distributed to Congress this week.
Well, Ross Dellinger, and I have been trying really hard to get him on this show. He is a busy man. That's a big story. It's going to be fun to watch. I can't wait to see it. By the way, cousin Mark Ham, friend of our show, there with Marty Smith yesterday at a meeting up in Knoxville. He talked to Marty about the show, and Marty said, I'd love to come back on. He came on last summer in the middle of the show. He goes, hey, I got a minute. Is there a spot for me? I said, come on with us. But that is an authentic mountain man from up near Blacksburg, grew up with Shane Beamer. John, what Ross Dellinger, he's one of those reporters that breaks a lot of stories. I mean, he is on the beat. Golly. Matt, your thoughts on that story with Ross Dellinger, because it's going to gain a lot of traction.
It's going to be interesting how it plays out. I mean, also to me, John, it's interesting that the SEC and the Big Ten have found some common ground for a change, right? So yeah. I think, you talk about the two biggest power brokers, definitely in college football and really pretty close in the basketball world as well. This is the first time I've heard it, so I'm trying to absorb everything. But I would think if you get those two power brokers on board, this is going to present some challenges for the future.
Yeah. So looking around now, back in, you got the SEC. In your opinion, John Hartwell, The Big Ten, they're not as good as the SEC. Is it the Big 12? Is Kansas? Bill Self he knows how to win. We know he won 14 straight Big 12 championships recently, not too long ago. They started off, they weren't ranked real high, but Kansas is doing what Kansas typically does. Is that the best league? And which league? You know, the Big East has UConn. You got St. John with Patino. ACC, Duke, no matter what, John Shire, they're always going to be good. And if you talk about money, all the investment banking guys, private equity guys from the Duke, grad program in business, they have one of the most powerful collectives in America. So they're not lacking for money, John Hartwell.
No, they're not. And here's what I would say in the ACC, another team that not a whole lot of people have talked about, but they have the money that they've invested. Watch out for the Virginia Cavaliers. Ryan Odom is doing an unbelievable job at Virginia. You know, I was fortunate enough to be able to hire him at Utah State for 2 years from Maryland, Baltimore County. Obviously, folks know his dad, who was a longtime Wake Forest and South Carolina coach. Ryan's claim to fame previously was, being the first 16 seed to beat a one seed when he was at UMBC. But that Virginia team, much like Florida, is solid, 1 through 5. Every position, there are a couple of guys there that can play, and they could make some noise in March as well.
Well, Matt Dean, you look at basketball. We all watch it. Y'all two watch it like, coaches watch film tape on a game. Houston, we talked about this yesterday, and Franz Beard said it Tuesday. Kelvin Sampson is complaining, we're broke. We don't have any money. Yet he's relying on these local kids from the Houston metro, which is, one of the 5 biggest metropolitan areas in America, to get their players. But all Kelvin Sampson, despite what you think of the guy, all he does is win everywhere he goes. Houston has become a mainstay. They came up just short for the national championship last year against Florida. They have the, what it takes to make another run.
I love Houston. I think their mindset, if you can play for Kelvin, you can do about anything. They're tough. They're going to guard, and they're going to be a tough out. I think the Big 12 with Houston, obviously Kansas, Iowa State, Arizona, BYU is a very, very good league. I also like Texas Tech. Now, if you look at John, actually stole my sleeper for the tournament. I think he's spot on with Virginia. I was real impressed the other night. Duke finished a close game against Michigan. So I think in the ACC, Duke and UVA obviously are 2 teams that can make a path to the Final Four. Big Ten, I agree. Besides Michigan, I've liked Illinois, to be honest with you. I mean, anytime Izzo team's got a chance, but I think Fred Hoiberg's done a great job in Nebraska this year as well. So those are just some of the teams off the top of my head. But right now, if you look at Virginia's 25-3 guys, and we never talk about them until Mr. Hartwell just did. They are really good. And I also think you talk about roster construction and spending your money wisely. I think UVA did that. I think they're spot on, and they are under the radar pretty soon. I would expect them to be probably a 2 seed, John, maybe a 3, depending on how it plays out. And they're going to be a very difficult out. But I'll tell you, Duke's talented. Duke's got a chance to make a run and win the whole thing. We've talked about Florida this morning and Arkansas. I think Alabama's style of play, they're unique because Alabama's the type of team, if they're not making shots, someone could beat them that they're not supposed to. And if they are making shots, they can beat about anyone.
All right, I'm going to flip the narrative here. Do we have a modern day case of the Indiana State University Sycamores with Larry Bird? Remember Miami of Ohio years ago had a guy named Wally Zerbiak. We got a spelling on that, please. But Miami is 28-0. I don't care who you're playing.
Yeah.
If you're 28-0, it's like a guy completing 27 straight passes against air. That is hard to do, John Hartwell from Fairhope, Alabama, in the office of the wife.
Yeah, it really is. And that Miami team has had a special year here's the challenge when you're at that level. And I've talked to several coaches at the group of 6 level here over the last 2 or 3 weeks. You know, if you have a loss as Miami here in the last 1 or 2 regular season games or the tournament, they are going to have some uneasy sleep. Now, I think they've won enough to get in regardless, but you have so many one bid leagues that, you know, 27-2 or 28-1 Miami that loses in a conference semifinal or stumbles late in the regular season, they're going to have to sweat it out on Selection Sunday because in that room, they're going to look at strength of schedule. They're going to look at, you know, how you're trending, all of those things, and just the facts. You know, there are a lot of one bid leagues out there that if the favorite or the best record team stumbles late, that in all likelihood, they're not going to get in. Miami, I think, is probably won enough to be able to get in, barring a couple of losses, but they certainly can't afford any more than one.
Yeah, I mean, you break those numbers down, you're right. Strength of schedule, Dave Bartu talks about that a lot in the CFP and how it's way overrated. And I think preseason, football-wise, 15 of the top 16 strength of schedules in America were SEC schools. The 20th was Nebraska. I'm sorry, Missouri. So they were 20th in football. But he says strength of schedule is way overrated in football. Matt Dean, is it way overrated in basketball? John brings up a good point, and I'm just thinking it's worth an ask because you play a lot more games than you do in football.
John knows this. It's very difficult for teams in the MAC, especially teams that are perceived as pretty good, to schedule those Power 4 teams. I mean, it's just a really tough proposition unless you want to go on the road. And I haven't looked at Miami's overall schedule, but John's spot on. I mean, we see examples of this year in, year out, where a team has a phenomenal year, stubs their toe in the conference tournament, and then doesn't make the NCAA tournament. Winning does matter, though, so I hope at 28-0, let's say Miami gets to 30 wins, John. I hope that we're not in that situation where if they lose, they don't get in, because they're an incredible story. I'll give you a Coach Hilgeman, Herb Hilgeman, Rhodes College story. He played for the legendary Tate's Lock at Miami of Ohio. Coach Hilgeman led the Commonwealth state of Kentucky in rebounding and was recruited by Joe B. Hall and Adolph Rupp. And he had been recruited by Tate's Lock forever. Coach was always big on loyalty, so he goes to play at Miami of Ohio. Now, let's fast forward to when Miami with Wally Zerbiak's in the Sweet 16. Herb and I go up to St. Louis to watch them play. I believe Irvin Magic Johnson was in the building that night from Michigan State, and Coach Hilgeman was wearing his 1970 Letterman jacket from Miami of Ohio. We went to the game. It was just priceless. And Miami of Ohio has always been known as kind of the cradle of the coaches throughout the years. Just some tremendous teams have come out of there historically. And I'm really excited. One of our staff members, Coach Robinson, is good friends with their head coach. They played high school basketball together, I believe. So I think it's a wonderful story. But John's right, man. They're still not secure. I hope they win their conference tournament just to make sure it works out.
Yeah, what's more annoying than a big fly on your television screen at night when you're comfortable in your favorite chair? You have to keep getting up and he leaves right when you get there. Than bubble teams. That term. Yeah. They start using it in the fall. It is beyond annoying. John Hartwell, can you come up with a better term? How about on the periphery teams? Can we use that word, or would that be too much for a lot of Americans? Periphery.
I think you use the term restless or sleepless nights, because you really, that's what it is, because you can't rest easy knowing that you're going to be playing in March Madness. If you're, and here's the deal. The teams know, nobody knows it better than the coaches and the players on those teams. And you know what? That makes for some great drama as you come down the end of the regular season and into conference tournaments, because they do mean something, because it could be the difference of being in March Madness or out, I hate to use this term, but heard people say it all the time and it still applies. NIT stands for not in tournament. I mean, no disrespect to the NIT, and they do a great job with that, but the NIT not in tournament. So that's why here over the next couple of weeks leading into March Madness and then right on through the Final Four in Indianapolis, for a basketball junkie, it's the greatest time of the year.
Oh, no, it is, because you got 357 eligible teams. What was it, 1985? I remember it. Gene Keady, man, that guy, one of the all-time great comb-overs, and he wore the zip-up boots on the side, and he always looked angry. But I remember Auburn was playing Purdue in the 85 tournament when they went to 64. And the SEC looks like they're going to get more bids again than any conference in America. But right now, the highest-ranked conference team, Matt Dean, is Florida at number 7. They're sitting there at 13-2. All they've got to do is win one of their last 3. They've got Vanderbilt coming to town. They've got to play at Kentucky. By the way, Mark Pope was complaining about officiating or something like that in the Auburn game when he said a couple of colorful things after the game. No team's ever gotten the short end of the officiating stick when they've played at Rupp Arena, have they? I mean, never. God bless.
I heard that, Rob. I think that cost him a little bit of money out of his NIL fund as well for those comments. What's interesting is, and John knows this, you look at some of those teams that make the runs that aren't maybe, the everyday conversation. I remember a few years ago, San Diego State, I think with Brian Dutcher, made a run to the Final Four. Matter of fact, I think they played Alabama on their way. And I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough is if you're able to maintain 3 or 4 years of players that just aren't quite good enough to maybe leave your institution to get a bigger payday, and you find a way to give them a pay raise and you keep them, that's the sleeper teams to me. And that's the teams that I always look for when I watch conference tournament play. Who are the teams out there that I haven't seen on the national spotlight that kind of, matches that criteria? And honestly, Miami of Ohio, I've watched them a couple times. They play really well together. They play obviously on both sides of the floor. I just don't know how they're going to match up, because the problem is if they get in, John, it's not like their seed is going to be advantageous either, right? We haven't talked about that portion of it. So I could see them in an 8, 9, 7, 10 game, and they're playing a team that's got a lot of money on the floor. Can that prevail in that situation versus a team that's probably stayed together, a team that's got a lot less money invested, but probably very well coached and obviously play at a high level together? Yeah.
Princeton had that coach, John Hartwell. Remember him? He looked like Mel from the Mel's Diner, had that comb over. They used to play the slow down game, and they get into the tournament and have some success. And they got some wins over the years, but it gets to become talent. But in the NCAA tournament, I think where a lot of the teams that are prohibitive favorites struggle is they've got a bunch of guys who've been together for a year. Some of them, maybe they've been there 2 years, and they play these smaller division, kind of group of 5, group of 6 schools. Those guys, some of them have been together for 3 or 4 years. Well, it used to be that way, but I think that's different now, because if you're group of 6 and you're really good, a Power 4 school is likely to grab you up. So I may have just canceled that argument out, have I?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I mentioned this on here before, and I know this is certainly true in the Sun Belt and a couple other leagues. Their coaches, I mean, and this sounds contrary to helping out the student athletes, but there's a reason behind this, that they want to do away with like first, second, third team all league, because when you do that at one of those levels, man, all that's doing is putting on a silver platter for Power 4 teams to say, hey, we need to take a chance on this guy. He made all league in this league. And nobody's going to do that, but I do think you may have first team and then honorable mention. You may not have first, second, and third team, and down like that, which again is all brought about by the onslaught of NIL. Hey, I want to mention one thing, Rob. When you talk about some of those other teams out there, you look at Arizona, and I know they had a loss recently, but one of the things that Tommy Lloyd has done, they have a large number of international kids, and he takes that model from Mark Few, whom he was, the longtime associate head coach under at Gonzaga. But he has the ability with some of those international kids and his relationship with coaches and agents in Europe and Australia and a couple from, China. He has the ability to kind of protect those guys somewhat. Now they're paying them for sure. They're paying them, but the ability to create roster stability where you have them more than one and done, and don't think that that's not going to matter come March as well.
Yeah. And, you look at the roster management part of it, Matt, and John's right about it. And then I like the part about honorable mention. You go first, second, and third team, you are advertising who your players are. You're now trying to keep people a secret. But that's been going on forever. When you got a program like Alabama goes and sees some kid at a 1A school or a 2A school that's not even rated, and suddenly they make him an offer, his stock's going to elevate. Isn't it relative? Everything's relative.
Yeah, it's interesting conversation. And John, I was recently on the transfer portal myself, looking through names. We're, we've got 4 first-year commitments, and we're trying to add a big, right? What's really unique sometimes when you're a coach and you go through the portal is you start digging in these names and you start looking. I got to tell you, I looked at 40 kids yesterday, and probably 35 of them were on teams that had a worse year than my team did, right? So it's like, then you start thinking from a chemistry standpoint, how does this kid going to fit in? Are we better off building from first-year recruits? And that's the hard part, Rob, because, let's say you're at ULM, let's say you're Miami, Ohio, and you have a stud and they want to get paid. They're going to get paid. There's no longer any secrets out there. I promise you. Coach Brady laid out the blueprint for us a few weeks ago, Rob, on this show about having like a GM that's traveling to all these mid-major games throughout the course of the year. So you combine the conference awards with some live scout. Well, you got a chance to put together a pretty good wish list at the end of the season if you didn't have a great year. And yeah. I think the better teams have the continuity. I do like, John, Arizona is a team that can win it all this year. They're really good. I know they lost recently, but they are so good. And I quite frankly just commend him for his relationships. He stayed at Gonzaga a long time before he took a head job too. And he's really done a nice job in a short period of time at a basketball-rich tradition school.
Hey, I tried to get him to come to Utah State. I recruited the heck out of him and interviewed him, and obviously he knocked it out of the park in an interview. I knew he was going to be a superstar, but he bided his time. It was if Mark decided to step down, which he didn't do, or taking a job like Arizona. Hey, Rob, I got one concern with the Dean family though, and I hope Matt's wife's all right with this. He talks about delving into NIL. And I don't see that silver chest or the hut with all the silver behind it. I don't know if he's gone down to the local pawn store in Memphis and cashed all that out to go get some players.
Yeah, Pawn Stars. I watch that show all the time.
I've moved upstairs, John. I've moved upstairs. Yeah. Not by choice.
That's the Lynx lair up there is what he's got. Some red and black in the background. But
said, Hartwell. Well said.
But, I think the cool thing about it, you mentioned Tommy Lloyd was at Gonzaga for a long time, and Mark Few just put them on the map, and they just won't go away. They're here now.
Yeah.
And Gonzaga is a fixture. We remember 2-3 years ago, maybe 4, when Arkansas beat Gonzaga, they were the number 1 overall seed, beat them on that Thursday night to become an Elite Eight team. I want to ask real quick too. Sean Miller was at Arizona and, survived what everybody went through, the September 2017 investigation, when we thought we had every school in America was going on probation, and, LSU with Will Wade, one strong offer, and every school had something going on. Auburn had Chuck Person accused of all kind of crazy stuff. Texas, John, Chris Del Conte, you know him, the athletic director. We all know they have a ton of money, but so does Texas A&M. How serious of a threat is Texas? We saw them last night. They faded late against the Gators. Get in line if that happened to you.
Yeah, I mean the Texas tea, the gold of that oil is not going away, and that the influence of oil and gas money, whether it's Texas Tech or A&M or University of Texas, is not going away. And CDC, as Chris Del Conte is affectionately known, he does not like to lose. So they're always going to be tweaking things, whether it's Matthew McConaughey or the whole list of celebrities that are either UT alums or donors. They're not going to go away. But hey, the competition is a lot stiffer than it used to be, and it's not just the allure of playing at the University of Texas or playing at the University of Alabama. At the end of the day, a lot of these kids today, that tradition, and I hate to say this, but it's true, tradition to a lot of these kids does not equate to the same things as dollars in the bank account. And that's why becoming a dominant institution, and regardless the sport or across multiple sports, I think is somewhat a thing of the past, because and we talk about the pros and the cons of NIL. I think one of the pros is the fact that it has created even more not parity across everybody that plays. All 357 Division I basketball schools are all 135 FBS football schools, but amongst the upper tier, let's say the top, 30 to 35 in football, and the number is not that much higher in basketball. But again, going back to the Gonzaga, going back to Wichita State, going back to, Marquette, some schools like that don't have to fund the beast of football in NIL, it gives them the advantage in basketball in some cases.
Yeah, and we've talked about that. Yancey Porter brought it up about a month ago. Are the traditional football schools going to put 90% into football, and basketball will just wither on the vine? Same thing with the Kentucky being a basketball school. Well, where's football? Well, they got money. They had to pay off Mark Stoops to make him go away. They brought in Will Stein from Oregon. A lot of ways you could take that, but I just think trying to build a culture when you don't have guys around very long, it's not easy. I always compare it to 13 weeks of basic training in the Army or the Marine Corps. You can get people pretty close in 13 weeks. You got to be tough on them. I mean, I think, Matt, as a coach, to me, man, the coaches that worked me, or teachers or anyone that's ever pushed me my hardest, I'm like, I figured it out. I'm like, man, they're investing in me. I better bet on myself. That's what that's telling me.
There's another name that just came to me, guys, that has done a phenomenal job over the course of the years, and they're 26-4 again this year. It's Randy Bennett at St. Mary's College, and they play Gonzaga, I think, soon, and they're 1-2 in that league. And I don't think they're probably a second weekend team, but St. Mary's is really well coached, and it's a joy to watch Coach Bennett's teams play. But like Mark Few, man. John, I haven't met him, but I've heard some great stories about Mark Few, just one of the really good guys in our profession, and has done it at a high level. What's crazy, John, going back, a lot of people won't remember this day, but you remember Dan Munson, who left there to go to Minnesota and then kind of fell off the map. And Munson was a really, really good basketball coach. And Mark has stayed out there and they don't have football, obviously, and it's just a situation where all the resources are aligned for their basketball programs.
Yeah, they really are. Hey, I know we've got some listeners who are huge basketball junkies. Do yourself a favor at some point. Take a Western jaunt and go to a game at Gonzaga. Go to Spokane. Go see a game there. But maybe even more so, just because it's old school. It's almost Hoosiers like. Go to a game at St. Mary's. You can stay in the Bay Area, but go to a game at St. Mary's, because I would argue they may have one of the best home court advantages in the country.
Yeah. Is that in Santa Clara?
It is. Gosh, I'm trying to think of what the small community. It's east of the Bay, just by about 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with y'all. I love those late night games on a Thursday night. But March Madness is such a big deal. I mean, it comes, right around St. Patrick's Day. I think last year it started on St. Patrick's Day. But this is what we're gearing up for. I don't know, Coach Brady, man, had technical issues. It looks like he's never had before. Sorry about that. We'll get him back on next week. But, guys, great discussion, in depth about SEC and college basketball. So we will do it again next week, guys. Man, it's like going to grad school. If you love basketball, share it, like it, subscribe, all of this. And, we've got great sponsors, Landers, Ford, Memphis folks. And guys, if y'all need a new vehicle, car, truck, or SUV, LandersFordMemphis.com, Poplar and Houston Levy, they have opened a second store. And Matt, this one, Dobbs used to be there at Mount Moriah and 240. Yeah. So they've got one in Collierville, Germantown, and now right in the heart of Memphis. Brad Bellamy, the GM, ask for him. They'll take $500 off. But they also will give you a great opportunity, a fair deal to begin with, plus another $500. So I love to see these people take care of our viewers. Also, hempforpros.com. Take the chill gummies, the lights out gummies, and the energy gummies. And also, if you got any aches and pains, these roll-ons, they actually work. I've used them. I still use them. If you get an injury, they really work. Hempforpros.com, the NFL Alumni Association. It's a 10-year collaborative. Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. They are open every day of the week, except Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Barber, Filson, STS, Duckhead, Devil Dog Jeans. They've got cowboy hats, boots. They got it all in mytownroofing.com. Hey, no talk from the secret face of Christ, released among us. Thank y'all for watching. We'll see you tonight.
Sidelines Sports on my mind. Rob Brown calling, game time, highlight shine. Executive mind, Brandon Martin, keep 'em Rob in line. Like, subscribe, share it, tell everyone. Sideline Sports, y'all come back real soon.